Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's new social environment. I'm Catherine and I have the privilege of being your MC today. A few quick notes before we get started. We'll be recording this meeting for the Rail archive, so if you prefer not to be seen, you can disable your camera in the bottom left corner of your screen with the stop video button. We'll keep the audience on mute until question time, which I'll kick off about halfway through the talk. Take a moment to introduce yourself and where you're from in the chat to your right, and if you have questions during the conversation, please write them in the chat and I'll call on you during the Q&A. The Rail team will be helping out with tech if you have any questions, and our production assistants, Everett and Tyler, will be typing closed captions to make our talk more accessible today. And now to introduce our host, Andrew Lampert, or Andy, has produced an extensive body of films, videos, performances, and photographs since the late 90s. He's exhibited at the Whitney, the Guggenheim, MoMA PS1, the New York Film Festival, among many other venues. For 13 years, he served as archivist and curator of collections at Anthology Film Archives. And in 2019, he was the artist in residence of the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation. He frequently writes on art and cinema and currently teaches at CUNY City College. Our guest today, Raissnia, received her BFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and her MFA from Pratt. Her interest in avant-garde filmmaking led her to work at Anthology, where she has also exhibited. Her time there left her well-versed in the cinematic avant-garde, and her projection performances often involve collaborations with experimental musicians. Raha's work aspires to the temporal and experiential condition of music. Her sixth solo exhibition at Miguel Abreu Gallery was on display this past winter, and most recently, her exhibition in Madrid was unfortunately postponed, but today we have the privilege of viewing some of those works during our conversation today. And now I'll hand it off to Andy to take it away.
Hi, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone at the Rail for making this happen, and to especially to you all for inviting me to talk to my old friend Raha, who, thinking back, I saw Raha before I met her. Because she was selling tickets at Anthology. So I saw her through a little hole in a plexiglass partition. And then as I came to be kind of a part of the inner core of the Anthology family, that's when I really got to know Raha, probably around 1997, 1998, somewhere like that. You think that's right, Raha?
Yeah, I think... Yeah, I remember seeing you before I moved in with Stone, which is right around there. Yeah, 98, 99.
Let me ask you. I want to talk about this exhibit, which it sounds like no one got to see before Corona happened in Madrid. But I want to take a second to get there. Where are you now?
What's that?
Where are you? Are you in your studio?
Yeah, I'm at home. You've never been to my place here, this place. But yeah, it's a place I live with Panos, my husband, and in Bed-Stuy. And it's an apartment, but it's one of these old apartment buildings where there's only one apartment on each floor. So It's quite big. It's a little bit like a loft.
It's like a floor-through railroad apartment.
Yeah, but it's kind of wide. It's not like it's quite big, actually. We got lucky. We got it. So anyways, it's...
So you're working, your studio is at home?
Yeah, half the space is mine, half is his, and we sleep in a very tiny room. It's, where we go in, take our shoes off, and so the rest is studio. And
Is what's behind you a work in progress from?
Yeah, it's a painting I started actually right at the beginning of this pandemic, right after I came back from Spain, which was on March 8th or 9th, like a few days before the lockdown they had.
Wow.
So yeah, it's funny, I went there at a really bad time, like literally the day after I got there, everyone was freaked out. So it was like, had I waited like a few hours, 10 hours, then everyone would have told me like, don't go. But
Oh my God.
yeah.
How many works are in the show, or were in the show? Wait, should we say are or were?
Yes. So what happened? We shipped all the works, and I went there to install. You know,
Yeah.
I went there like 5 days before the opening, and I had a film installation to do. So although we figured a lot of it out beforehand, before I got there, the measurements of this and that within the space, but it's still, I kind of really had to go there to install, like, you know how it is with film and stuff. So I went there like 5 days before the opening to work on the installation. And as soon as I got there, everything was cool. They were like, here's the keys, get some sleep. We're excited. We start hanging tomorrow. And I got some sleep. I woke up and went to the gallery, and they came to the gallery a little bit freaked out. But we managed to work most of the day. Actually, we figured a lot out that day. We kind of pretty much hang, the core of the show. But, we still had to wait for pedestals and cover the windows. I have 2 film installations in there as well as paintings, but we had to darken the space, figure out what goes where. Even though everyone was nervous, we worked. The next day, they came to work really freaked out. That day they told me we probably have to cancel the show. And then I was like, oh, is there a flight? Maybe I should go. And they were like, yeah, if you can call the airline. I left the next day. I got a flight back. But we managed to hang the paintings. We managed to kind of set up the film projector. We hadn't finished hanging the cube, so I'm covering the window, and the pedestals were in there. So that's where it's sitting, right? And I think after I left, 2 days later, they had 3 days later, it's when Trump said, closing the borders, they had a lockdown, and the owner of the gallery went to the country home, and so the gallery is closed since then. But all the works are sitting in there at this state that I just described. So
wow.
Yeah.
How many works are in the show?
So the gallery consists of 2 rooms. One room has the film installation that it's the same as one of the film installations I had in my last show at Miguel. If you remember, I know you.
We have. Wait, Raha. Wait, we have pictures. So we'll see those in a minute. But I want to hear. Not to interrupt. I wanted to hear briefly about how many works are in the show.
So there's 1 film installation in 1 room, and then the second room I have 4 paintings and a slide installation, which is a number of slides that get projected onto a screen that it's a painting, really consists of 2 paintings in the next room. So, but 6 pieces really. But the film, the slide piece uses all this number of images that you have that we're going to go through. So a lot of images, but
okay, that's cool. I want to go back a second, because you studied in San Francisco at the Art Institute, right?
No,
Chicago.
Yeah,
Chicago at the Art Institute, and then at Pratt, and you studied not filmmaking. You studied painting. Is that true?
Yeah, I studied painting, but when I was at the Art Institute of Chicago, I was interested in film, and something went wrong, and they allowed me in this graduate course they had on avant-garde cinema, history of avant-garde cinema. And the Art Institute of Chicago, they had like a whole they have an archive and about it. So it was a very intensive course graduate course on history of cinema, and somehow they let me in there. They let me, even though I was studying painting, I was interested. It was a graduate, I was an undergrad. I took that, and they just said, you know what, you can skip the papers and the exams, but you can take the course. I don't know how that happened.
So you could just come watch the movies and not have to.
Yeah, I would just come watch the movies, listen to the discussions. I love the kids. It was so great, and I didn't have to write all those papers and exams, and they were much older than me. So I had experienced that. I'd watched the Bruce Connors and all this, great stuff. Slept through a lot of them. It was like in the theater. So, but I was studying painting. I also was studying photography, but mostly painting. I did study a couple of semesters of photography. It was very analytical, very theoretical. I got a little tired of it. I just wanted to learn how to make a nice print, and they weren't teaching that. So I got fed up with it and went back to painting, and really studied painting. I finished with.
So is that what drew you when you came to New York?
Yeah, so when I came to New York, I went to Anthology by chance. I didn't know anything about it. And I walked in, I met Stone. He's like, come in, don't worry about pay.
Wait, I gotta explain, because we're having a conversation, but 73 people don't know who Stone is. Stone Sogo was a young, exciting filmmaker and artist originally from Osaka, Japan, who came to the U.S. In high school, sent by his family because he was a troublemaker. And he was actually the connection that brought Raha and I think a lot of younger people and young energy to Anthology Film Archives in the mid-90s. He was one of the only couple employees there. He was a projectionist, and he was the only person who knew how anything worked. And it was because of him that Anthology, which had become a very stodgy home of the academic avant-garde, was a little bit resuscitated with new youth and energy that took it forward into another phase of it. So Stone Sogo,
it's really nothing like how it is now, or has been in the past 10 years. Like, it wasn't open every day Anthology. I think Jonas used to come and handwrite the program of the day. It was like a very, very, very different Anthology back then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was an extremely shut off place. And so you came and you're saying you met Stone.
I walked in, I saw a film, and I just knew it's a very special place. And then I moved to New York to go to Pratt. I started my first semester, but I couldn't afford it. It was weird. I was in New York. I didn't want to go to class. Like and I.
That's not weird. That's normal. Who goes to school in New York?
Yeah, it was. Going to Pratt was an excuse. Like, I applied, I got in. It was the only school I applied to. It was like an excuse to come to New York. So I go to Anthology, and I drop out of school, and I'm poor. I don't know anyone, and the only thing that remained in my head was Anthology. And I just went there and I asked, can I, do anything? Can I clean the bathrooms? Can I, can I do it? I just went there, I just went there to hang out and just go in there and watch movies, see Stone. I could watch movies for free. And so I just started going there and asking this. I started cleaning the bathrooms, and just then, I would just go there every day. just because I didn't know anyone. I dropped out of school. I didn't have any friends. It was very lonely.
But
I was
you continued on at Anthology for a while, working there and volunteering and being around, and you did eventually go back to
yeah. Then
painting.
what happened, I went back to school. I decided, because I was working in Anthology, it was hard, you know. Because I was watching all those movies and working, but I didn't have enough time to paint, and I really craved to paint. So I thought going back to school would be good. I lived in Dumbo, actually. I had and it was very like harsh time because Dumbo was very severe. It was really industrial, lonely. It smelled bad. The building I lived in, like, you know, it was like the bad living conditions. So I decided to go back to school and get an apartment. And Stone was breaking up with his girlfriend Anna, and he needed a place. So him and I decided to find an apartment, which we did near Pratt. So when I moved in with Stone, was like it's when I went back to school. It was like a new beginning for me.
And is that when you embraced, even though you were studying painting and continued to, you know, get deeper and deeper into that, is that when you embraced the sort of multimedia cinematic aspect to your work?
No, the whole time I lived with Stone, I didn't make films. I didn't do anything filmic. I was painting. I went back to Prague to paint. I was working on Anthology. I didn't, there's nothing in my head, not a small idea about making film. No, nothing about filmmaking. I was a painter, and it was weird. I was like the only painter there who never made any film. I did work with Super 8 when I was at school at the Art Institute, because like a first year foundation, you have to take this, they call it time art.
Yeah.
So as a, you know, I made some Super 8 films, and then I'd taken a graduate class in avant-garde cinema. But the whole time I was at Anthology and the whole time I lived with Stone, I had no idea of making, I was painting. And then what happened, Jonas let me have a show of my paintings at the Courthouse Gallery at Anthology. I curated a couple of shows, and then I had my first like solo show there at Anthology, paintings, nothing to do with film. And Briggen came in, and this musician from
Briggen Krause.
Yeah, involved in the downtown scene. And he said, you know, I really love these paintings, and I'm a musician, but I get most of my inspiration from artists and visual artists. I love Joseph Cornell, and I really want to collaborate with you. So, you know, he was cool, and I was like, okay. Then like, you know, that was like, okay, what can I do with a musician? So this, you know, I had to think of this whole element of time came in, what to do with a time-based thing. And so, and then a friend of mine who played music at Pratt, I was still a student at Pratt, had a band, and they got a gig at this dive bar in Williamsburg, and they invited me and Briggen to do something. So I was like, what the heck am I gonna do, you know, with a musician? Can't just like hang a painting. So then I didn't have a camera. I didn't have a film camera. I don't think even I had maybe a 35 millimeter film, just a still film camera. But anyhow, I had this one antique slide projector, and I had shitloads of copies of slides of my paintings, because, you know, back then for like 15 years I documented all my paintings and drawings with slides, so I had a lot of copies of slides. So yeah, so within like a week or 2 weeks, I, you know, came up to make something to perform at this dive bar with Briggen. So I got all my slides, you know, it's the only film thing I had. I took the projector, the slide projector was one of those antique projectors when you can put one slide at a time.
Yeah.
I took this part out. I had all these images of my drawings and paintings as film, 35 millimeter. I started cutting them up. I got this acetate. I painted on it and, you know, taped it down, made this long strip. And that was my first film. That was my first gig, and got to perform it with Biggin. And I had one friend who came to see it, and it was Kenny. And yeah.
Kenny Wallison?
Yeah.
Kenny Wallison, yeah.
And then I graduated. As soon as I graduated, it happened. I had my first solo show with in Chelsea, the gallery.
Andrew Krepp's gallery, right?
Huh?
Andrew Krepp's gallery?
No, Thomas Urban.
Oh, Thomas Urban, correct, yeah.
And there, I was very excited about this film thing, and you know, I started, you know, I was friends with a lot of musicians. You were performing by then, and the gallerist Thomas was like, you know, if you want to do performances during the time of your show, you can do that. So me and Briggan like organized every weekend for the whole month and a half during the time of my exhibition. We invited many musicians, and you performed with us one night. Remember?
I remember it happening. I don't remember what I did, but yes, I totally remember.
Yeah.
I remember the show. I remember the room. I remember Gerd Stern from USCO came to the night that
I think
I was on.
It was Briggan, Okyung, you and me. You and I did the projection.
Oh,
Okyung
wow.
and Briggan, and
yeah,
then one
that's
other.
starting to ring a bell. That's starting to ring a bell. I want to ask you something, because you're talking now about music, and you know, music is something that you and I both, you know, strongly relate to, and have had a lot of friends in the music community. But you talked about a switch in terms of painting and filmmaking to sort of this notion of time and time-based. Now I'm looking at that work behind you on the wall, and I think of the other works of yours. And what is the difference? Aren't they time-based too? I mean, I know that time-based traditionally, you know, and let's say cinematically would mean that it's durational. But is a painting durational?
Yeah, of course. There's time in everything. There's you know, when you look at a painting, you know, it's with the film brings the time frame, and the viewer, it's, you know, has to go with that time frame, you know, as a beginning and the end. With the painting, the viewer comes, you know, they can stay with the painting as long as they want. They can glance at it, leave, you know, they're not forced, they're not given the time, but there's time in it. There's time, you know, spent making it. I mean, we're talking about the viewing of it, right? The audience and the view.
I'm almost talking no more about the production of it for you, because in a way, as I've watched your work develop over the years, and you know, you had the style you have now. I mean, when I met you, you were already on paper, on canvas in this area, but you've only continued to advance and deepen your technique. And with it, one of the things I think about, maybe we could pull up, Sophia, if you have the images from the current show, or the canceled show, whichever we want to call it, in Madrid. I'd love to share some images of Raha's recent work.
One thing I have to say, these recent works resemble my very early works. I had like this sort of weird detour, like my work, like as I continued to work with film, that the kind of like a photographic, a figurative element entered in and influenced my paintings. And now the works I'm doing have less of the figurative, the photographic. So this is how I see it. and this painting too resembles my early works. Just want to say, like, because you talked about the style, you know, this.
Yeah.
Because if you look at my paintings from 5 years ago, they don't look like this, you know. So, anyhow.
Well, what I think it's interesting talking about this, you know, your early interests and your in film happening, of course, alongside your studying and developing of your painterly voice. But when I look at your paintings, they are so materially engaged with, like, the substrate, the canvas, the paper, the darkness of your paint, the erasures, these things. But they also share. This one is a very good example of something that's very photographic, and that this seems to me it could be a time-lapsed exposure, like a photo or a film where the camera was left open, you know, so that you have almost a multiple exposure in time being recorded. But one of the things that we talk about in filmmaking and photography, and let's look at some more of her paintings if we can, just keep scrolling through. But one of the things that I think about here is not something I think about as much in painting, but depth of field. You know, depth of field is such a major concern in film. You know, from John Ford's Stagecoach and Citizen Kane, you know, until today. But, you know, in painting, you might have foregrounds, backgrounds, and, you know, other planes. But I look at your work and I almost language-wise want to talk about it in terms of depth of field with cinematic terms. Is that something that is weird, or is that true for you?
I studied photography. Like I said, I didn't study filmmaking.
Right.
I just studied the history of it and watched a lot of movies. But I did study photography. I learned about what depth of field is. But when I make the paintings, if I take a photo, I think of depth of field, you know, like what's in focus, how wide is my lens and all that. But when I paint and draw, I don't even think about foreground or background. I don't think about it.
No. They seem so pronounced in sense because of the layering. It'd be like in this one, for instance, if you move the arrow down a little bit to the straight down, like you have an area that's almost like in soft focus, in front of a harder plane, you know, behind it. And I get a sense, like with almost 3D, of what's popping out and what's receding from within that. And I wonder if I'm infected to talk about it through cinema because I'm looking at it through the prism of you working through cinema, or how much those two bodies of practice commingle, you know, in a way. But like, for instance, when I look at this, if we're to think about like painting on film, I don't think about that at all. Like, I don't think about Brackage or any of those other people whose works I know you seen. But somehow when I look at it, I do think about it through a photographic prism. I don't know, it just strikes me that way.
Because with these recent works, I combined drawing and photographs and direct painting on film, and kind of combine all those.
Let's go to the next. Can you explain or talk us through an image and about what you mean? Is there a particular image that would?
Yeah. So here with these works, it's funny because it's not funny, but I'm going back to exactly when I first started making films, like I told you, when I was cutting up images of my drawings and pasting them down on acetate and painting directly on the acetate, cutting up fragments of parts of drawings and paintings. That's what I'm doing with these images. these in particular, actually, like,
Can we see another one? Can we go to the next image?
is the first time that, like, okay, so you see the drawing?
Yeah.
That's a drawing that I did by hand with pencil, completely out of my head. I didn't reference any kind of photographic image, anything outside of what was in my head or I came up with. But it's layered with a acetate that I hand painted, that accidentally in my studio got scratched and got messed up. So that's what this is. And
what's the final?
Here, I scanned the film, the painted acetate, and the drawing, and then I superimposed them. So that's how this image is made. So it's the first time I used to do this by hand, little piece of films would put together and then put it in a glass mount, and then I would have a slide. That slide I can project, use in a performance, a filmic thing. I can also scan it and then print it, or scan it and then make a painting out of it. Here, but I used to do it by hand, put it together by hand, like when I first started making film. Here I did a very, very minor, basic thing, layering, superimposing in the computer. It's the first time I did this thing in the computer, and then I printed it on 35mm film.
So the final piece is a transparency?
Yeah, this is gonna be a slide that's gonna get projected onto a 2-panel painting. Yeah.
So is this then only a work that you use, like an element of for a kind of installation painting, or is it a? This is great because I don't know what to call it.
But the thing is, what's going to happen with this, I think, because I generated many.
Yeah.
This is going to turn to a painting later. I'm going to make a painting out of it, probably. It's not going to look like this, but so most my paintings, the paintings that I've been making,
let's look at a couple
are informed by this process of filmmaking. So,
in filmmaking, you would call them maybe optical printing or bypacking, having a couple of layers of film being rephotographed at the same time.
Yeah.
And now can we go back to the last one real quick? One previous. Can you talk to us about this one?
Yeah. So here I combine an image of a painting I made. So all the the black parts, that's from a painting, but that painting was informed from a previous slide I had made, which I don't remember what I used to make that slide image, but I made a painting based on this slide image that I made by hand, by cutting little pieces of film and, I don't know what from what, photographs, drawings I made into glass mounts, I scanned it, printed it, I made a painting from that, not so directly, but interpreted from based on that slide. So here I'm used that painting, and then I brought fragments, parts of very old drawing from I think 2005 or 6, and then all the green parts is hand paint, ink on film. So all the color you see, it's hand painting done on film, superimposed with the image of the painting, fragments of the drawing, and then I created a new image, and that's what you see.
Again, time keeps coming up. You're using old pieces, which you made analog. You're cutting them up. You're scanning them to make them digital. And
yeah, then I put it on, then I print it on film, then I project it onto paintings, and then probably I know now I'm going to make a painting based on this image.
But you also use those same images in live performance, so they can be,
Yeah,
they can have different manifestations, right?
yeah. So I use, I might use this as a slide and then project a moving image film over it or with it. You know, when I do a live kind of projection performance, I use both still moving image and I combine them. I kind of, you know.
Can you talk about scale with these? Because your paintings and drawings can be quite large. But do they start, a lot of them, in let's say the recent work and the ones that would have been in Madrid, had we been able to go there and see it with you, would they have started from the smaller, not microscopic, but like fragmentary small images? Is that?
So this is going to get projected as a film slide onto this double screen, which is essentially made out of 2 paintings. So it's going to get projected onto these painting panels. One is sheer, the other one is opaque. The light goes through it, hits the back. So it will be like a filmic, like a painting.
Can we click forward in the images to the piece that I believe you said was going to be in this show, had previously been at Miguel's show, the cube projection?
It's right at the very end, the last image.
Here we go. So that's not exactly the piece you just described. The piece you described, I've seen in performance. This is actually a 16 millimeter. Is it double 16 millimeter?
Uses one 16 millimeter film, projecting onto this kind of cube thing, which uses this see-through fabric. The light just sort of gets trapped in there. It's opaque enough to absorb the image, but also the image goes through it. So you can kind of it's like looking through, looking through the light, looking through the film.
How did you come about with the content of that film?
Okay, so this one, Briggen, this musicians, the guy who got me, it was through him that I started making film. We continued our friendship, and over the years I kind of, after him I worked with other musicians, but a few years ago, I don't remember, like 7-8 years ago, he knows I work with, I collect slide, I like film and stuff. So he works at the media. So he went to grad school at Brooklyn College, works at the media center. I don't know if he works there now, but he found this box of slides that was thrown in the garbage at the, they replace all the slides with digital images, and I guess they threw away all the incredible slides, and he picked one box out of the garbage. And he always wants to start a new project. So he gave me this box of slides, and he's like, we really should do something. And here's these slides I found, and I thought you would like them. He gave them to me, and then I wanted to do a collaboration with him. So I was like, why don't I do something with the slides that he gave me? And there were these slides. Was supposed to be for architecture, his art history, or his architecture department, documenting this abandoned 14th century mosque in India. he gave me those, that's what the slides were. So then the time came where, I didn't have a show, and I thought, why don't I do something with Brigand? Why don't I make a film and do something with Brigand? So I thought, I should do something with these slides he gave me. So I got those slides, I put them in my slide projector, I projected them in my studio, and I usually project them onto different paintings and different surfaces, and I started rephotographing them. And then my whole show at Miguel, everything I made came out of the initial thing was from the slide.
Those gifted.
So I no drawing. There was no drawing or painting at all. It was just rephotographing the slides that I projected onto in my studio, and rephotographed and scanned, manipulated, layered, then made a film. Actually, there was another installation that used 2 projectors that superimposed the image in real time. They get superimposed onto the cube. But for this film, I did the superimposition in the computer. So there's this connection with the other work. And then I took all the color out. So it's black and white and uses one. It's hard to explain.
No. I mean, I'm not. That's a good explanation, because I think my question definitely about where did you get the source of it's interesting, but I am interested here in your relationship to the content contained in these images that you might submerge in the layers, and what about it resonates with you. In this case, you said that Brigand gave it to you and it seemed natural to use it.
It's like, I work a lot, so I'm always in studio. I have this obsession or love, whatever you call it. Like, I'm always working. So just there's this continuation, there's this, evolution, or so one thing leads to another, and a lot of it is accidental. Brigand gave me this, happened to be, Islamic architecture. And, I don't know, and I'm from Iran, so there's something in the back of I like very ornate things. My drawings are very, there's this use of geometry, and so I don't know, and I know I learned from Stone. It was a Stone influence to rephotograph. I learned a lot about filmmaking when I lived, even though I wasn't making films.
Yeah,
when I did start to make, he gave me when he left to Japan, he gave me his Super 8 projector. The first film projector I had was from Stone. He told me how to use it, how to clean it, So I know this thing of rephotographing, which I use a lot, in the last slides, these works, all my works, influence from Stone. I learned that from it. It kind of gave me this freedom that you can rephotograph, you can scan, and you can.
Do you ever, I mean, you in the past, I think you have, but maybe a question is, do you plan to in the future make single screen, single channel, whatever you want to call it, films that one would sit and watch in a theater, or on a monitor?
I've made 2 like that. Yeah. I made only 2.
But are you interested?
That was in Venice Biennale. It's just one film, but we put it on the film loop, so it was shown as a loop.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I personally don't care about film anymore as a medium to work with. Laboratories prior to coronavirus have closed. It's become kind of problematic on a high level to use a format that is become almost literally extinct and to use equipment that is from minimum 35 years ago to try to exhibit the work and all the technical problems that come with it. I, like you know, did a lot of film performance. I had an epiphany some years back. I went to Europe, which I'd gone to, you know, a number of times previously to do shows with projectors, carrying all this equipment and dealing with different voltages and every hassle that an expanded, so-called expanded cinema person. I see you smiling because you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I love your work. I love what you do. It's so great.
But then I went one time and I just brought a 500 gig hard drive, and I went around to a number of places. I did shows and I didn't have one problem. I could show up an hour beforehand instead of 2 days beforehand. And I really realized that for
With
me,
what?
it was
With
dead.
with a video projector, you say?
Yeah, I realized that I could be productive and creative and have possibilities open up for me with using contemporary technologies versus dead technologies.
Yeah.
And that it also made my life easier, but also, no, really, quite honestly, it changed my perspective. Now, at this point, in 2020, I wouldn't, if you gave me a 60mm camera, I would hand it back to you. Do you embrace the possibility with what you do? Because you do use digital in your process, but it's not necessarily your end.
I think
What in the end.
I see a distinction still. If they made, and I think they do now, I don't know if I have access, if they would make a slide, a video projector that could, or a film projector that would give me this quality that I like, that film gives me, then I would just use that, maybe. But I see a distinction. So, you know, it's not the same. So it's, I don't have problem with the digital, but it's just like, there's something of it. It has a certain aesthetic, you know, which is great. I really like it. I like, you know.
Oh no, I understand it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because in preservation, Peter Hutton, the great filmmaker, black and white filmmaker, who's like almost, I mean, I'm not necessarily a fan of Ansel Adams or anything, but his technique is astounding. And
astonishing.
Astonishing. Peter Hutton, I was preserving some of his films at Anthology, and we had thought, let's try to do something, because in a digital realm, as well as in, you know, on film. And we preserved it on film. We had an original print, we had the new print, and then we had the digital copy. The digital copy, as good as it was, made by the best professionals you could, you know, pay to do this, looked horrible and was thrown out. But the film that ended up being preserved looks maybe 90% as good as an original print that he made in the 1970s. And so we're always getting further and further away from the possibilities of reproducing faithfully.
Wait, the digital one look 90%?
No, the new 16mm one.
Okay.
The new
so
16.
You couldn't get it digital as good as the film. You failed.
The film looked the best. The new film looked second best. The third, which is digital, was no good at all. It couldn't reproduce the tonality, the texture, the grain, the feel. And you know, feel is like soul. It's these ineffable, like these things that you don't know what they really are, but you feel them. Mm-hmm. And the digital did not have that. But I will defend digital and say that it does have soul and it does have feel. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people in the film world, maybe it's changed the last few years, have been very holy about film and
Yeah.
very nostalgic and romantic about it. And that a lot of people, particularly in film performance, fetishize
Yeah,
film.
I'm not like that.
No, I just want to think about that because I don't.
I'm so not like that. Maybe people think I love digital. Like, it has a certain quality. I mean, like people know, like the technology brings content, has a different content. It has a different aesthetic. Like the shittiness of the image, like it has a kind of like a cool. I don't know. There's it's just different. It's just another medium. That's my thing. It's like acrylic and oil paint. Acrylic tried to, replace oil, never succeeded. Painters know that. What you can do with oil paint, you can never. Still, they tried a million years. Water-based acrylic, it's less toxic. It's so easy to use. It's not necessarily cheaper, but it dries fast.
Right.
Right. It cannot do what all oil paint does. It can never do that. And I see that with film and video. Acrylic is really, I love certain paintings done with acrylic. I use acrylic. I use water-based and mix it with oil paint. I love mixing the two. But they have their own inherent qualities that cannot be replaced. It's just a different nature. It's just a different thing. So for me, it's just that, I use digital technology. I scan, I do shit in the computer. It's so easy for me to re-photograph things digitally and then put it on film. I love using the two. I would hate to see one go, and I can see what one offers and the other lacks, you see? But I'm not like nostalgic about that at all. I hate carrying these projectors. I had to have a surgery done. I like, it's a pain in the ass. My last show was so difficult. I had to go to Spain and maybe get corona, because I knew nobody could handle the looper and the projector. You know what I mean? It's a real pain in the ass. I hear you. But
I think that in 5 years, you won't have 16 millimeter to work with anymore. What do you think? Is that okay?
Yeah, I don't know, but we'll see. I'm not sure. But maybe I'll make my own projector, maybe I'll paint on film and make some, we'll go back to the very beginning, use a lens and a candle. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just like, I haven't seen, sometimes I watch the Pedro Costa film, or, I see some films in the theater and it's shot with video and it's very hard to tell. It's hard for me to tell if it's film or video sometimes. But for me, I see that, it's not the same. But, I don't have access to I know video tries to replace film in quality, but has it succeeded? Like you said, it failed with Peter Hutton, so.
Yeah. Oh, I just think about it.
It's just a different thing. I like to make a video. I like the shitty quality of video. You can use it, like Stone used it. I like it. I haven't used it yet, but
you're open to it.
Yeah, of course. I'll make a video with glitches and stuff. Yeah. So to answer your questions, I definitely don't have this fetish and this nostalgia at all.
Yeah. No.
I see the distinction.
Of it. I'm more curious about your thoughts on it, because when one makes experimental film, let's just use that word, even though the majority of it's now made on digital, and it's just a strange terminology thing. There's a relatively small circuit for it, and the films that are film, or the work that circulates about, I'll just say on celluloid, and expanded cinema. You and I have both been in different festivals around the world where people are, using multiple projectors and live music. There is a overwhelming fetishization of material that is, to me, as retrograde as the avant-garde can get. And your work has such hybridity in its means of production, from analog to digital back to an object again, using projection and other aspects in the process to make a fixed image, which is a painting or a drawing. And that image itself, just to spiral back to the beginning of the conversation, has a lot to do with time built in. And, more so than just a sketch of a still life or something like that, simplistic would. And I think that your work, why I'm so drawn to it, is that it does bring this hybridity to like this foreground, but you operate like a painter when you are making live film works or live cinematic works. And I think a lot of people who make live cinematic works are operating like projectionists, more so even than filmmakers often, because abstraction in the world of experimental film tends to be devoid of any kind of content. It's just light or color or something having to do with sprockets and scratches. And I think that your work, because it can kind of exist and it does, it travels through a lot of parallel worlds, supersedes that kind of just empty light show aspect of it in a very deep way. And I actually want to just ask you one last question about performance and your relationship with Panos, who has done the sound for your, for a while now with you on performances. Can you talk about working with Panos on your live works?
Yeah, sure. Panos is, when I met him, I was teaching at City College, and I was teaching drawing, and he was a grad student there, made drawings, not paintings, but drawings. Then, we started, after I lost my job, we started dating and stuff, and he got so obsessed with making instruments. He was a sculptor and made this very conceptual drawings. So when we got together on his own, he nothing to do with me. He went through this period of, had these ideas for making instruments and got into music. And I was working with musicians. We got, and then I had a gig or something, and then I couldn't work with the musicians I've been working with, and so it just, I needed some sound and music, and then I asked him if I needed music, I needed a musician, and my musicians wasn't there, so then that's how we started working. It's not like, but then I don't know, the sensibility, and maybe that's why we got together, and it touched me, and I really worked, so I continue to work with him. But he's such a pain in the ass to work with. Like so now I don't know who I'm working with. So, that's how it started. Then he got into it, I got into it, and we were invited to, we have about 4 or 5 pieces that took several years to develop. Now they're sort of finished, and we can re-perform them. Now we're not working together. We have no plans. I don't know. He doesn't want to work with me because.
Do you need music when you do a performance? Is there
No.
a necessity?
Oh, one thing I have to tell you. Hell with Panos, all the musicians. Now I'm doing the music myself. Like you, Andy. You told me this many years ago. Because, it's hard to work with musicians. They have their own shit and you have to, travel with them. All this, their ego and all this shit. And anyways, it's great. But now I'm doing my own music.
Good.
Yeah, and you told me that. You encouraged me.
I'm glad I don't remember, but that's
you told me, Raha, do the sound yourself.
Oh, I think I was right.
Yeah. So my first performance at when I was actually Panos bought me an instrument, the synthesizer, as a gift.
Oh yeah.
And I had it sitting here. I didn't dare to open the box and use it. Jonas passed away, and then we wanted to make a gift. We were invited to make a gift for Jonas, Microscope Gallery, blah blah blah. That's when I took the instrument out, and then I did my first gig at Microscope. I got really into it. I rehearsed for days and hours, and did my first performance, and made a piece. And since then, I haven't made a film work, but so now I'm the musician too.
Well, I always remember doing a gig with Tim Barnes, Sean Meehan, some other person, a third person on percussion. And I was doing projections and they were doing music. And at a certain point, and I wouldn't say I was doing projections. It wasn't like I was doing projections as background. It was supposed to be, this is like a double projection and this is the music. And one would hope that they have a relationship. It wasn't a Cage Cunningham thing, at least in terms of how we had discussed it beforehand. And I was in my position, operating the projectors and thinking to myself, what is going on with this music? What are they watching? Why is this so off from what I'm doing? And I looked over at them, and all three of them had their eyes closed. And they were just in sound land, scraping on drum heads and things like that. And I thought to myself, that's fucking bullshit. You're not contributing. You're not having a conversation. And so I think that, with collaborative relationships, you can define it. You do what you do. I'll do what I do. They just happen simultaneously go. Or you
John Cage versus Cunningham thing.
Exactly. You can do that. But that in collaboration, what most can take it up or bring it down actually is conversation, and sometimes just talking to yourself might be one way to do it.
I think I had this thing that you give value to with Panos. Perhaps because we lived together and, we had this intimate relationship. We were, he was watching me painting, he was working, unconsciously, like we had this, that's why, like, otherwise I wouldn't work with him. I'm not sure with the other musicians, there was, so, I don't know, different than what you had, but I feel like with all the musicians I work with, I had this psychic thing a little bit, otherwise it would feel really weird. There were times that I felt disconnected, but I can say that we had this, we didn't have to like, here's my film, watch it, make something to it. But we had this psychic thing. We had that, and it was kind of great. But then dealing with them, they're, traveling with them, ego, how much am I getting paid? I have to do this for you. Like, I that shit is like a little difficult. But I haven't worked with a lot of musicians. I don't perform a lot, but I didn't have what you just said. I never really.
Well, I just think that these are.
But I can see it could happen. It could happen.
Well, what you've done but I think what you've done strongly with Panos and, maybe into the future is develop a work, and I think I always sort of recognizing these problems have tried to as well, that maybe it doesn't fit in at a music festival, maybe it doesn't fit in at a film festival or wherever the venues are for these sort of things, but it's not dependent on having to fit those formats. Meaning that when working with musicians, I had come up against a problem I think you have too. It's like, am I supposed to just be a projection? Because I'm not. Like, this isn't like trippy stuff that's behind the band on the screen. This is its own entity.
No.
This is like me being, this is a different type of, I'm a different member of the band or whatever you want to call it in this ensemble. And so by developing,
You're not VJing, basically.
yeah, exactly. God, fuck VJing, as a term even. But no, I think that what you're talking about and what I was trying to raise is that sort of idea of it just being an independently time-based music, sound, light, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to be called cinema. It doesn't have to be called live music with images. Like, just to do something that can be its own entity.
Andy, I hate to interrupt, but we are past 2 o'clock now. So if you guys are ready, we'll open up to Q&A now. And thank you so much for this conversation. I love hearing all the stories, and Raha, I love hearing about your process. It's really, really fascinating. Our first question comes from Everett, and Everett, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Raha and Andrew, thank you very much. Raha, I really appreciate how much energy you have in terms of addressing these questions.
Okay, I can hear you.
Oh.
Andy, I just want to say, let's talk about this later. I want to hear we got to get together and talk about that. Anyway.
All right.
Sorry.
No, don't worry about it. I wanted to know, how would you describe the implications of architecture or references to...
Anyways, okay, go ahead. One more time.
What did you say?
No, I wanted to, this is very important what Andy was saying, but I like to talk about it later. Of course, we have time limits. So anyways, just want to talk to him about it later.
Okay.
Sorry.
What's your question?
How would you describe the implications of architecture or references to architectural presence in your work, in your practice? Like, from the beginning of your practice to when film and installation began to integrate into your work?
What about it? Well, sorry, can you, one more time? Sorry.
I was hoping that you would describe the implications of architecture in your work, or any references to architectural presence in your work throughout the timeline of your practice.
It's so not conscious. I have no idea why this architectonic artsy word. I don't know. Like, when I was undergrad at the Art Institute of Chicago, after towards the end, I was making these works. People started telling me Piranesi. I have no idea. I don't know how. I don't know why this architectonic thing in my work, and it continues to be there. Somehow, I think, I'm not sure, might be wrong. It's this thing maybe from as a kid crawling on Persian rugs, but the rugs have architecture in it. I don't know, and it's like pattern. Also, I lived in a city. I grew up in a city, very densely populated. I lived in the heart of Tehran. That combined with Islamic architecture, or I don't know. Somehow that's in my work. It continues to be. But consciously, I'm attracted to scientific forms, organic forms. I fuse it with architectural forms. Consciously, I do that, maybe to do with content or something like that. But how architecture get in there, I don't know. I never studied architecture. I'm interested in architecture, but not that much. I don't know a lot about it. I don't know. I think maybe I'm interested in kind of a dense space. Maybe what Andy was talking about, depth of field. There's this density in all the images I work with, and that kind of alludes to architectural space. Maybe because I'm grew up in the city, always lived in a city, something that's around the environment, but it's not like a conscious thing at all. I'm not interested, or I never studied architecture, or I don't intentionally use architectural forms. Something has always been there. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Raha. Our next question comes from Emily. Emily, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you, Raha and Andrew, both for talking. It's been so interesting. You talk so much about the aspect of time with regards to music, film, and art. How do you think specifically about tempo or rhythm when you are creating a work of art? And related, at what point does music come into play? Is it always at the conception?
Again, it's not like a conscious thing at all. I mean, I listen to music when I work, not always. A lot of times I like to not listen to anything, just be alone and work. But I love music. I'm definitely influenced by music. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I forgot.
I find that making, as I've gotten older, making work with music on is getting harder. When I was young, I think when we were all young, we could have it, but my focus has changed a lot. Do you
Yeah,
still listen to music a lot though while you paint and do things?
a lot less, Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to just, when I, yeah, a lot of times I just want nothing. I can't even listen to, sometimes I used to listen to things. I can listen to things if I'm gluing or gessoing, but if I'm working, I don't want anything. I don't even want music. Yeah, less so, yeah. But what her question was?
Well, I think when I'm thinking about tempo and rhythm in your work,
Tempo.
it's quite interesting. Besides just music, in free music or improvised music, experimental music, often there's not time, per se. It's not 4/4, or, 5/8 or whatever. It's it's a pulse, or something like that. And does that relate to more than let's say time measurement, and tempo and rhythm and stuff like that to you?
When I'm working?
Yeah.
When I'm painting, let's say?
Yeah. Or just in general, you're like how music or musicality might meter, versus pulse might manifest itself in the work. I think that's a question.
I have no idea.
That's a good answer.
Sorry, I really I've never thought about that. I'm not conscious of that when I work. All I can say, sometimes I listen to music. A lot of times recently I don't. I don't know. Sorry, maybe I don't understand the question, but it's not a conscious thing.
Cool. That answers it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Raha. Before we move to our final question, Jason Rosenfeld in the chat wants to know when you will finally post to Instagram and what form do you think that will take?
What's that again?
when do you have an Instagram, or will you be using Instagram as a tool, and what form do you think you could take there with videos on Instagram and film?
Yeah, he must not have nothing on Instagram.
Do you think you will move onto that platform at any point?
I think I'm so confused about Instagram and this stuff. That's why I don't post anything. Like, I don't know. I need some time. I don't know. I like going through.
Time.
My favorite I go on Instagram to see an Andy post and a few others. I love them. But whenever I post something, I feel weird, and so I just gave up. Maybe it's like I'm too self-conscious or something. I don't know. I just gave up on doing anything on Instagram, and I don't know. I have no opinion about it. I don't know what to think. All I know, I feel uncomfortable with it. I don't know why that is. I like how Andy does it. Like, I love Andy's posts and a few other people. And they do it very differently than Andy, but I really enjoy looking at it. But myself posting things, I'm very uncomfortable. I don't know why. Maybe I'm too self-conscious, but I have no posts.
That's fair. Okay, so our final question comes from Charlie. Charlie, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hey, Charlie, my friend from Brooklyn Rail.
Hey, Raha. So good to hear you and see you. It's really warmed my heart on any day. And really, really great questions, Andrew. I've been deeply inspired and curious, and I hope that when you carry on your conversation, we can get some of the feedback. But my question was about your performances, Raha. I wanted to know a little bit about how you handle improvisation when you're performing.
Yeah. So throughout the years now, I really think it's really important. Rehearsal is really important to me. I really like rehearsing. Maybe it's very similar to musicians, but then there's always room for improvisations in all my works. It's never a set thing, you know. I never make anything that I know it's like strictly structured. Even when I rehearse, I'm improvising for the rehearsal, but it just works my chops, you know. It gives me confidence. And I think I used to not, I didn't know that before, but I've noticed recently, like the more I rehearse, the freer I am when I come to perform it for the improvised sections, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just like I become more familiar, then I can be more subversive or something. So I try to rehearse a lot. I don't always succeed because the musician doesn't want to deal with it, or it's not accessible, or I don't have the time. But I have this urge to rehearse a lot and then let loose. And in all the pieces I work, there's a structure, you know, there's pieces. I know there's maybe let's say a score, very loose, but there's always room. There's always like, I have to improvise. It's never the same, you know, it's not strictly structured. Yeah, so, you know, I always know, like, I have like a certain, I have this projector, I have this film that goes in here. I know this, I have to combine this comes that. I there's a structure, but within that structure, I improvise. So that's what it is. There's a lot of improvisation, but there's also a lot of fixed elements.
Thanks, Raha.
Thank you, Raha, and thank you so much, Andy.
Hey, I want to ask a question.
Yeah,
Andy,
sure, go for it.
When is the issue project thing? How can we all see that?
I was commissioned by Issue Project Room to be one of the, however many, 6 or 8 artists who are doing making new works for something called the Isolated Field Recordings series. They've had a few of them so far. Last night, Shelley Hirsch did one, Larry Seven a week ago, a number of fascinating people. And so I'm making a new 60-minute long piece that on May 7th will, I think it's kind of confusing. It's at 8 p.m. It starts streaming on their website. But so I think it's up on their website for a number of days, and then eventually on the front page, and then eventually it gets archived. And it's presented as a stream initially, and then it is a 60-minute long.
60 minutes. Yeah.
It's a.
What was it going to be before this Corona thing? Like what?
No, it's entirely music and some sounds that I've recorded, along with some images. It's not a film. It's not a video. I think of it like a CD, and I think of the images as liner notes that would be in the physical CD object. So I am making a CD. It just happens to be a live stream that is in the form of a fixed video, if that makes any sense. And it's mostly, I would say, 45 minutes of music, songs, and jams and weird things, and yeah. So that's Thursday, May 7th.
What time?
8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then it's on their site forever, or till next week, if that's the end of the world. I don't know. It's on their site for a while. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, I can't wait to see. What about the big sneeze thing?
That's a piece that I've worked on and off for a number of years on, but I wonder if now, after coronavirus, I'll be allowed to do it anywhere. It's called My Greatest Sneeze. And it's about a sneeze that I had when I was in like maybe 10 years old. And, I think about it once a week.
Did you perform something? Like, sorry, we're going over time. Wait, at the Rauschenberg Foundation.
Yeah.
Last time I came to visit you, you had this big Bellator fucking.
The fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's different. That's a different piece. These are hard questions to answer at the end of the conversation with you about.
Okay, so finish the sneeze thing.
The big sneeze. I sneezed once when I was 10 years old, and it was almost epiphanal sneeze. And I've come to realize over the years that people don't remember their sneezes particularly. People might remember a really bad episode of like food poisoning or bad instances when you had a problem with your stomach or throwing up, but people don't remember sneezes. So mine wasn't. This is an epic ode to my greatest sneeze, but it starts with really one of the earliest cinematic images, which is the sneeze from the late 1880s, early 1890s. So
by who?
I think it's kind of not going to be allowed to be shown anymore. But
who made this?
Edison or Dickinson. One of the earliest sort of pre-cinematic movie and image pieces is a sneeze. If you can type in the sneeze and O-T-T, William J. Ott, I think his name was, or just William Ott. One of the earliest films is of a sneeze. And so sneezing is actually
the particles in the air.
I think it's almost the locomotion of one's head, outside of Muybridge, And so I realized that at a certain point, and it connected to me deeply in terms of this, my greatest sneeze. So that's a piece that I feel like no not-for-profit arts institution is going to want to ever present.
It's so relative to now. I have a joke.
Oh, I like jokes.
Sorry, can I say it?
Yeah.
Why are toilet papers so scarce these days?
Why?
Because from every sneeze, 50 people get the shit. Or from every sneeze, 50 people poop in their pants.
This is the elevated content and dialogue that Fong and Catherine and everybody was hoping for here at the Brooklyn Rail.
Thank you for that joke, Raha. Okay, I think it is time for
Andy,
us
man,
to
my
close.
friend. Thank you. So thoughtful of Brooklyn Rail, Fong, all you guys to ask and match us up. Thank you for your deep thoughtfulness
And thank you guys for this wonderful conversation. The Rail has a tradition of ending our conversations with a poem, and today our poet is Tyler. Tyler, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hello. Thank you so much for having this conversation. I've been smiling so much during this.
Thank you, man.
So I'm going to read a poem by Carrie Edwards called Exchanging Water for Wealth. Will I always stare into the darkness of those who wait in dead and familiar, not suitable for the main course, gone up in flames, done up in toxic blossom, 99.9% similar, alone facing inquisitional preconditions for normal. Billion miles away, I burn. We all burn. The ice melts. The multi-industrial playhouse brings more boom boom to the local meat market. Almost underground, next to preservations first. Down the corridor to a crypt-like, discarded, hopeless, outdated metal file cabinet. Locked in room, waiting for benediction. New icons for teeth. Somewhere someone says, chemistry for the future. Somewhere someone says there's never enough, mesmerizing heads, dieting on crystalline traditions, exchanging water for wealth.
Great poem.
Thank you.
Very much.
Before you guys go, just a reminder to join us on Monday at 1 p.m., same link, with guests Limor Tomer and Mark LaBelle with Paul Miller, aka DJ Spooky, 1 p.m. on Monday. And if, as you leave, you want to unmute yourselves to say goodbye, please do so now.
Bye, everybody.
Hi, Dominic.
Dominic.
Bye. Good to see everybody.
See you soon, I hope.
Thanks so much, Andy.
Long live Brooklyn Rail.
Adios, Bruce.
Thank you, Raha.
Always.
Hi, Roxanne.
So long, Crip.
Hi, Roxanne.
What
See
beautiful
you,
light.
Jason.
Hey, Sai. I hope you're working on something good.
Bye, you guys. Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Charlie.
Bye, Bruce. Bye, Pip. Bye, Todd. Bye, Jeffrey.
Bye-bye.
Jason. Bye.